My name is Noelle LeBlanc, and I'm the owner of Work Loft, a co-working and private office center in Marblehead, Mass.
Noelle, thank you very much for joining. And I'm so happy that you're here to share your story. So let's start with your story. What was your career before you started the Work Loft, and why did you start the Work Loft?
Thanks, Jodi. Previously, I had been in a variety of high-tech sales and management roles, and most of my experience actually was working outside the United States. So I had a lot of exposure to, other places, other cultures, the way other people do things and conduct business. And that was wonderful. And a natural transition came up for me a few years ago, about 3.5 years ago. And while I had been in the sales and management roles, a lot of it had been, if I weren't on a plane or overseas, a lot of it was working from home.
Yep.
And I realized during that time that it's wonderful for some things, and in other ways, it's not all it's cracked up to be. And we really felt that, we being my husband and I, who were both working from home, just really felt that a place that we could go and get out of the house and work and be around other people would be a great idea.
What was that moment of the aha moment where you're traveling and you're working in hotels and you're working at different office spaces? I mean, why would the Work Loft be the spot? Because there's so many different other locations where if I'm coming in from another country, I would assume, hey, I'll be in Boston. Why in Marblehead?
Oh, that's actually a great question. I mean, you know that Marblehead has a unique geography in that we're isolated on a peninsula. So Marblehead is a little bit difficult to get to. It's also a little bit difficult to get out of. And that means that a lot of people who live here and in the nearby towns have an awful commute if they need to get into the city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes it a natural place for anyone who lives on the North Shore of Boston, really. So that's why, it's an ideal location. Obviously, if you're coming from another part of the globe and you're going to be doing business in Boston, you stay in Boston. But for anyone who lives in the North Shore, it's actually very well situated.
Well, it's funny because that you say that, because there's a lot of different times that I travel as well for work. And there's a lot of times where I choose to find something that's off the beaten track, where I'm not just in the city, because the city is it tends to be extremely overwhelming. So how do you attract individuals that are not from Marblehead or from the North Shore?
Well, to be honest, there's not a ton of regular members who meet that description, because we are really used and visited mainly by people who live in this area. That being said, people host a lot of meetings at Work Loft. We have a beautiful conference room, and our main area can also be very easily rearranged to accommodate larger workshops and seminars. And so when people host events or meetings at Work Loft, folks are coming from outside of Marblehead to get to, see our town and use the facility and all that.
Well, we have such a huge tourism in this town of Marblehead. And it's I think that it's just one of those moments where people don't know that there's just more than just the ocean front. And so you creating this environment for them has been very, very, very good. So walk me through again, why did you leave that traveling world? I mean, it sounds so decadent where you're traveling around the world and you're working for all these different organizations. And why did you decide that it was the time 3 years ago to start this business?
Yeah, great question. And I'm smiling outside and inside, because I love remembering that period of time. You're right. It sounds decadent, but you and I both know that travel is wonderful for so many reasons. And I think being in the other place is fabulous. Getting there isn't so fabulous. And it's tiring. It got to be tiring. So while I knew that I was very much going to miss my international contacts and all those great experiences, I knew I wasn't going to miss the actual travel part. And I'd been in the high tech world for over 20 years, and I think I just felt it's time for a change. It's time for change. And it's also great, I think, when you realize that, to give yourself the chance, give yourself the possibility
Mhm.
to consider the question, who else am I?
Yep.
I've been doing that for so
I love that.
long.
I do. I love hearing that, where like, who else am I? Which is perfect, which I'm going to use that. So I'm going to keep talking, but I'm going to come back to that.
Mm. No, that's, I mean, I think, allowing that transition to happen and think, who else am I? What else might be in me? And realizing that it's an internal conflict, and waking up every morning with that question instead of meetings to go to or planes to jump on was a little bit weird, but, like a lot of things in life, allowing the process to happen and learning from it was great.
Well, this is like a perfect time where a lot of individuals are going through furloughs. A lot of individuals are working from home and they're just finding the comfort zone. A lot of individuals are losing their jobs and they're thinking maybe this is the time to start something new. So what advice would you give to someone that is looking to start something new possibly? Or how do they actually create something new within the company that they're staying with?
That's a really great question. And I think that being an entrepreneur and being in business for yourself is, um, it's a wonderful experience. And I think that not allowing fear to be your guiding voice in making decisions is really important. And I think a lot of people, when I was getting started, for example, I think when a lot of people would talk to me about it, they would ask me questions that were actually coming from their own fears about change.
Yep.
They would ask me things like, well, but what if it fails? But what if you can't get another job? And but what if you can't make money from it? And maybe you should. So maybe you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say for people who are considering starting something, by all means, take constructive criticism or take input and ideas. When someone says, hey, that sounds great, just curious, if it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to, what else have you got up your sleeve? What's your backup plan? That's a legitimate question, but, you shouldn't start because you might fail. That's coming from someone else's base of fear, and it's probably not a good guiding principle for you to internalize if you're considering starting your own business.
Right.
So by all means, think about plan B, think about your backup, think about alternatives, think about how you would pivot if things don't go the way you want them to go. But be careful about internalizing other people's negativity if it's ultimately going to get in your way of moving forward.
All right, and you said the key word pivoting, where right now we are dealing with, again, could you ever imagine us saying the word pandemic in our lifetime?
Yeah.
It's just something that's just like so bizarre and so odd to, even for me to say it right now, I find it to be so bizarre and we're living in it. So how has your company changed? What have you done? So from the time that first word came out, that we are possibly going into a pandemic, to the point where we are live in it, and what happens now for you?
Hasn't it been an interesting time?
It's very, very, it's strange and surreal at the same time.
It sure is. It sure is. Well, so I would say that at Work Loft, we haven't so much pivoted as we have shifted our weight. So I'll give you a few examples.
Yep.
Inside of our space, we have a large open co-working area where people will come in there. They will choose where they'd like to sit that day, from a variety of open seating options. In addition to that, we have private offices. So around the perimeter of our building, we have private locking furnished offices on something like more like a conventional lease.
Okay.
And so when things started to change, we got the idea that, our open space might not be able to stay open for long. We actually made the proactive decision on March 16th, prior to state recommendations. We made the proactive decision to close it. And that was done mainly out of a sense of social responsibility, I would say. I mean, nobody willingly cuts off a revenue stream, right? So that was a difficult decision to make, but we knew that we had revenue that we could probably continue to rely on from our private office clients. So we shifted our weight a little bit in terms of marketing and also in terms of how we offer our service to lean toward private offices. So everything we can do to make the private office experience easy, accessible, enjoyable for private office clients. How can we get the word out to people that private offices remain available? Yep. So we shifted our weight toward marketing those. And meanwhile, in the background, we've been improving our social media presence. I mean, this is a golden opportunity. If you're not in the space doing the things you usually do, how are you going to spend your time? Let's go online. I don't mind confessing that I am really not skilled at all in the social media world. I mean, that's the understatement of the century right there. It used to terrify me. It no longer terrifies me, but I realize I still have so much to learn. So I say we because I kept my employees on staff and asked them if they would please work from home. And let's just spend time during the day thinking about how we get a better online presence, how we stay connected to our customers. What communications do we put out there to say, we're here, this is what we're working on, and how about you? How are you doing? So, we're continuing that conversation in a different forum, and we're looking at different processes we have in the business and how can we streamline those and improve those. I mean, I imagine if this goes on for a really long time, we might run out of things to do from home. But at the moment, it's been wonderful. I mean, we've made so much progress in terms of how we present ourselves online. I'm really proud of that.
Oh my God. I think that's one of the things that I am so happy about the most, where taking this opportunity and taking this time, because we have endless amount of time. Someone said to me yesterday where there's no longer a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's how everyone's seeing it. And so how are you going about creating new ways to get more visibility is fantastic. And so I think that's fantastic that you are finding new ways to engage with your customers, but and to promote what you're doing. Now, are you creating more avenue streams as in for the customer in this like new discovery?
How do you mean?
In regards to if you're creating these brand new revenue sources, I mean, not revenue sources, but brand new ways of engaging online, sharing those learnings to your customers, because I'm sure that a lot of your customers are working in their silos inside your realm. Are you creating ways that for them to learn from what you're learning?
I suppose by example, maybe we are. We're not particularly communicating the learnings as such, but I think that, when people see me doing Facebook Live videos, I'm showing by example that I'm sticking my neck out and trying something new and hoping that it's compelling and interesting. So yes, I hope that by example, we're demonstrating that it is possible to make great use of this time to learn and expand and change and improve.
No, I think that's one of the things where the learning by example, because a lot of it, and I'm seeing people like posting, whether it's artwork, whether it's like it's food, whether it's going outside and just trying a new sport. I love that a lot of people are posting these things. So I think that you creating that essence with your team is fantastic. So I love the fact that you kept your team. So why did you choose to, in this time? I mean, you see a lot of people that are not. So why did you choose? Why did you make the decision to keep the team going and finding work for them to do?
Thanks for that question. It's in the past I used to race go-karts for fun when I lived in Europe. Go-karting was a thing. I'm going to give a little racing analogy that carried over when we moved to the US. My husband really got into cars and racing, and so we'd go do track days, and I'd do training courses with professional drivers on tracks. And one of the things
I love these skills that I'm learning about. I love it.
I know. we're learning a lot about each other in this time, right? But one of the things that I learned from those experiences in racing, obviously when you're on a straightaway and you're going fast, you see a corner coming up ahead, and you know that you have to brake when you're going into that corner. If you don't slow down, you'll fly off the track, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to brake when you're coming into the corner. But the trick to overtaking your opponents and in theory winning the race is be the fastest one out of the corner. Mm-hmm. So here's the analogy to business. We're coming into a difficult period. Mm-hmm. We need to hit the brakes. Things might get a little funny in the corner, but how do we be the first one out of that corner? How do we accelerate fast and under control once we're out of that corner, so we can, fly by competitors and be successful and just do the best we can? That was my primary motivation for saying, let's keep the team on. I mean, obviously we all want to be good to each other in this time, and there's a little bit of that too, but what was really in my mind is, how are we going to come out of this corner fast and strong and under control? And the trick is to not stop. Don't stop. Don't brake under panic. You'll lose control of the car. Don't slow down to the point that you can't accelerate. Keep your line nice and tight in that in that corner, so that you have you're perfectly positioned to take off. And so that was it. I said, let's keep going. Of course, after that, I realized that the government was coming out with some plans that would be specifically designed for small businesses like me to help us and motivate us and encourage us to keep people on staff. So that was kind of nice. But again, all these things, being kind and considerate and knowing that government support was coming, didn't play into the original decision. The initial decision was, how do we stay strong and keep working so that when this is over, we shoot forward.
Beautiful. I love that. That's one phenomenal analogy. And two, I mean, it speaks to what a lot of people should be focusing on. So, I mean, I think that was fantastic. Thank you. We open tomorrow, like everything goes back to normal tomorrow. What's your first day look like when we walk into the Work Loft?
I think about it all the time. I have dreams about it at night. What's that going to be like? Yeah, I think at first probably people will be a little bit anxious about getting back out in public, and obviously being a community-centered space, that's part of what we are. We're about getting together. So what we've been talking about right now is, how do we improve the space, the building itself, the space inside, in a way to give people the maximum level of comfort and well-being, sense of well-being. And so this does translate into some tangible considerations, like how do we improve the air quality? How do we make as many surfaces in the space that you might have previously needed to touch, for example, a door handle or a pull-out trash bin, how do we make these touchless? So, how do we install hardware that will allow people to open doors using a foot pedal, for instance? How do we rethink, the waste disposal areas so that there's nothing to touch and pull out? Little things like this, and larger things like improving the air quality in the space, have kept me busy over the last few weeks. And I think that between now and early May, we will be implementing a lot of these, and we'll send a communication out to people in advance. Because I guess kind of coming back to your point about what will the first day be like, I'd like people to know, even if they say, hey, I'm kind of anxious about this, I'd like them to know that, hey, Work Loft has been thinking about this and making improvements, and also adding much more space between seating areas is another thing that we're working on. So next week, for example, we have some movers coming in to take out half the furniture in the open space. So when people come back, I want them to feel like, okay, look, I have some anxiety about being back in public. I realize things might not be perfect, but the folks at Work Loft have been thinking about this and working in the background to make it as safe as possible and the same old wonderful community experience that it was before.
I think I love that whole entire concept of you're not sitting idle, and you're finding ways to pivot in different ways to make sure that your clients, your present clients, as well as your future clients, will feel number one, welcome, but number two, making sure that they understand that we are taking care of you, and we are being very mindful and considerate to what's happening around us. And the foot pedals on the trash can, that's ideal. That's absolutely fantastic, because a lot of people wouldn't invest. They were just thinking, we'll just go as we'll just think that it's going to go back to the way it was, and not realizing those little tiny things that could cause anxiety for someone. It will be a game changer. So I think that's actually brilliant that you've been not only thinking about it, but you're actually going to implement it as well, which is fantastic.
Thanks, Jodi.
So I'd have to say that if I had to think of, if you had to like put out an ask to actually, you know what, before the ask, I always get excited about hearing what we can do for you. But how are you balancing your time? I mean, again, there's a lot of time for work, but there should be a lot of time for you. So how are you doing that whole entire work-life balance? Because when you're working from home every single day, there's that blur of having them both together. So what are you doing to actually come up with brand new skill sets, or just doing things that you're really passionate about that fuel you for when you're actually working?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'll just come right out and admit it. I spend a ton of time in the kitchen. Yeah, I love it. I love food. I can't help it. So I treated myself to a new appliance because, like half the world, I've decided it's all of a sudden the right time to make bread. And I'm not a baker, so I'm confronting that, that challenge. I have yet to plug the stand mixer in and actually do something with it. But, I think what you're talking about is actually really important for anyone who works from home. And, bear in mind, that is actually our traditional clientele, people who work from home and find that it's great for some things and not great for others. So how do you separate work life and home life? And under normal circumstances, we'd like people to be able to say, I go to Work Loft for that. That's where I have my work experience. And then when I come home, it's all for me. It's all for my family. So, yeah.
So is there anything that you've made that's like so epically amazing that you would have never made before? Because I mean, my mom's a chef. I love baking and cooking, and I don't do it that often. But when I do it at a grand scale. I have failed miserably twice at making bread. Going to the store, there's no yeast, there's no flour. I found yeast, I found flour, and I literally bombed the bread making situation. So, I mean, is there anything else something that has popped and said, you know what, I would have never made this if under any circumstances, but I've made it and it came out great? Any advice for us people that can't make bread still?
I'm with you on the can't make bread. And I'm with you on the having procured gorgeous flour and yeast and then having wasted it all on a horrible result. So we're in the same boat there.
Okay, good. We can sit there and talk about that at another time.
Yeah, we get into that at another time. No, I don't think there's anything that I've made that's been, stunning or epic. Just it's a release for me being in that kitchen and just enjoying being at home and putting on nice music and cooking and eating and tasting.
Oh, I love it. No, that makes me happy because it's the way that I end my night, where most people are winding down and I'm like, okay, so what's in the cabinet and what am I gonna make today? It's like usually the way I end my evening. Okay, so the ask. We want to make sure, I mean, my entire goal of doing this is like basically sharing a lot of stories from small businesses and startups, international organizations and nonprofits that literally are still working, still creating brand new ideas, still finding ways to pivot. What would be your ask for the universe? Like in regards of what is it that you want people to know about you, about your organization, about the business that you're growing? What would you like from the universe to get to you today as well as when you open?
Thanks. Come back. That's my ask to people. Come back. I think we'll all have some concerns about what that's going to be like, but my hope, my wish is people come back. People make our business what it is. It is at the heart of its being. It is a community-centered business. It needs the community to thrive. So that's my big ask is, come back. And we're busy doing everything that we can to make it safe, even a better place for well-being, physical and mental. And please come back and give it a try.
Beautiful. Noelle, thank you so very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to sharing your story with as many people as possible. And I wish you the best of luck during this brand new normal that we're living in.
You too, Jodi. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I really love talking with you. Thank you.